There are two types of blues scales. They are major blues scales, made up of a 1, 2, a flat 3, a major 3, a 5, and a 6. Then you have the minor blues scale, comprised of the 1st, flat 3rd, 4th, flat 5th, 5th, and flat 7. As you can see by the examples, they're both comprised of 6-note scales. I probably use the minor blues scales the most because of the built-in flat 3rd, flat 5th, flat 7th. This enables me to use a predominant 7th, minor 7th, half diminished, and even diminished chords. I instantly sound bluesy, which works well for so many different situations. Now let's look at the example. This is a basic 12-bar blues style song in F, as you can see. For the purpose of this book, I will focus on the minor blues scale. Now look at the blues scales coming up. I have included for you all the minor blues scales. You can also access all this at my website, jazzbook.com. As you can see, there are 6-note scales. I wrote them out 2 octaves. And the blues scale, depending upon the rhythmical patterns you decide to use, you have the freedom to add the missing notes of the scales when using them. Now what you do is select the correct blues scale to the chord. The easy way to do it, for example, is to select the same scale name as the chord. If the chord is an F7, you select the F blues scale. For the B-flat 7 chord, you would select the B-flat blues scale, and so on for the rest. Eventually, your goal would be to memorize these scales, like you had to do in the old days while studying music. Once the scales come easy, then you are ready to move ahead. For now, I have done that for you with the next example. Rhythmic patterns are totally up to you. You notice in this example, I have the blues scales written out, and they're all ascending. And like I stated earlier, the rhythmic patterns are up to you. You can just vary them all you want. Okay, now let's look at another song. This one will be in the key of B flat. Now let's do the same thing as far as finding the correct scales to go with the chords. And again, I have written out the scales for you to view here. Okay, now here we go. In the key of B flat, I have them all written out. Now it is time for a basic tutorial of what an improvised line would look like. If you look at the next example, you will see one of my original works. You will notice that the melodic line moves up and down like a wave. At times, it appears scalar, and other times it seems to be moving more chordal. This is how it works. I like to think of the improvised line as a living, breathing creation. The rising and falling of the improv line is very evident, correct? And you can even see where I breathe. It is obviously a high-energy song from all the gymnastics you see in the line. My point is to make it seem as human as possible, very natural type feeling. Now, here is another example of the wave effect with another one of my original songs. This is called Tonight My Love. You probably notice three distinct traits. The wave effect is obvious, a mixture of linear and vertical line movement, and I make breathing an essential part of the improv line. If you go to the popular streaming sites like iTunes, Spotify, Pandora, or YouTube, you can listen to these songs for a better, more holistic example of what we have been looking at. The way I have taught my improv classes over the last 20 years is to break down the improv line to its simplest level. I would suggest that you try practicing the scales in this way. Start each scale from the root. Once you begin to get a feel, move on to the next example. So step 1 is start with each scale from the root. Once you begin to get a feel, move on to step 2. Okay, now we'll go on to step 2. On measures 1, 3, 5, 7, 9, and 11, I start on the root. On measures 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, I start on the top note and go down. Now what you want to do is work with it until you get a feel and flow for it. Once you are able to develop a flow going up and down throughout the song, experiment with the rhythm, tonguing, slurring, speed, etc. Okay, now let's look at step 3. Step 3 is when you look at the scale and find the first, third, fifth, and seventh scale degree. And what you do next is to practice vertical movement. First, you will practice the blues song by arpeggiating from the bottom up with each chord. After that gets more familiar, try starting the arpeggio from the top and go down with each chord. Once that gets comfortable, then alternate measures arpeggiating up and down to get the wave effect going. Feel free to add breathing. Now this example, you can see it. You can see the wave effect. It's very obvious. In step 4, the next step is to incorporate both linear and vertical movement by alternating throughout the song. Here is what it might look like: arpeggiated and linear. Now you have an idea how all this works. I would suggest you go to my website, thejazzbook.com, spelled jazzbk.com. And I would suggest you go there, and that's where I have exercises with written sheet music of different songs and the audio backing tracks for you to practice to